So as we move on, the next things you have to look at is what happens when you do that, because what we're showing is that orange that's highlighted here represents the right-of-way on the private property that would need to be introduced to link these streets and create this kind of district. So this shows it a little cleaner so you can see specifically the areas that would be part of the Fisher DeJoria project and those areas that would be dedicated towards right-of-way in this redesign concept. And then you can start to see the fill-in areas of the green spaces. Well, if you're going to be doing that, the first thing you have to do in putting together concepts is understanding what the underlying density is, because if you're going to be giving up right-of-way, you need to find a way to offset that. So understanding what the densities of the property as they exist is really important. And when you're doing a master plan development in Park City, they have a requirement to do what's called a site suitability analysis. And that analyzes each individual piece of property in a larger context of our MPD, what the development is and what the development rights are. And so I'm going to walk you through how these might work. These are the individual lots that are being assembled for one phase of the MPD. You can see as it grows, each one, we add up the areas of the property, and you start to understand how these properties are broken out into pieces, even small pieces. And then the next thing you'll do is you'll look at what are the setback requirements in the zone. So this is a general commercial district, and this represents the setbacks for those properties. And then you need to analyze the maximum development potential. And so if you assume that each building has an underground parking structure and that you've got 35 feet plus another 5 feet of, if you have a pitched roof, you could easily put 3 stories in a location like this. This represents what that would be like. And so we just, to give the variation that's needed, what we just assumed that we not try and reach for any 4th floor in the underlying density and assume that that would be taken up with any kind of exterior variation. And this represents about 352,000 some odd square feet of development property in 3 stories. And if we were to take that same square footage and then put it into the street right-of-way as we've been proposing, we've shown this area, and it gives you essentially 5 stories to reach that same square footage. So this is a little under what the maximum density on the property would hold. But by giving up the right-of-way, it reduces your development footprint, and so we'd want to see in return some height advantage to gain that square footage back. This is the yard properties, and this is another piece that has a series of parcels. We'll look site suitability analysis on that also. Each one of these parcels has its own development rights. And this has been recently combined. That would be the setbacks that are required in the zone. And then the building footprints are slightly different because of the scale of these individual parcels require MPDs anyway. And so they have a reduction because of open space requirements. But putting 3 stories on each one of those developable areas results in over 358,000 square feet of development rights. Now you can also notice that if you were to get these properties combined, the development potential is actually much greater because we've got perimeter parcels that have no development rights because there's no setback. You're not able to meet setbacks. So it's important to understand how that works. If you took that in 3 dimensions and then looked at it, how it might work in combination with the proposed new right-of-ways, this might be how it would look. On the right-hand side, you're seeing 4 stories, and on the left-hand side, it's 5-story structure. So we've taken those ideas and then said, okay, what we're looking at is a mixed-use development, and in that mixed-use development, we would have both mixed-use buildings and then maybe single-source buildings. And what we're looking at on the corner of Bonanza Drive and Kearns Boulevard in the top right corner, which is the northeast corner, that light purple might represent institutional uses, might be school uses, could be medical or any other kind of support institutional uses. And we think it's a prominent area. It would be a great place for those kinds of things. They're not driven primarily by surface parking, and it could make a great statement into the district. The darker purple areas we see as being potentially, sole source residential buildings might have some additional height because they're on the north side, allowing some transfer in height between different buildings. And then the yellowish orange colored buildings we see as true mixed use, where first level has commercial area, upper levels are combinations of office and residential areas. The larger one in the middle, close to Market Strauss on the bottom part of the district here, we see as being some sort of civic structure. Potentially could be a conference facility or something similar to that. And what we'll look at here is a animation of that district and what those densities and heights might look like. It's going to pause in several points so we can talk about what ideas are coming from that. But what we've tried to do is take those true mixed-use buildings that are shown in yellow, reduce the heights so that as a shopping district they're really comfortable, maybe 3 and 4 stories, and then move some of the density that we would see on those back to the darker purple, the residential areas. And that would give us more solar access into the market areas and also provide views and solar access into the residential. Now this is stopping and looking down Bonanza Drive, and we're on the service side of the street. And this isn't necessarily the architecture that we'll see, but it gives you an idea of the sense of scale. Now we'll move down Bonanza Drive and look down the street, which is currently called Munchkin, but we see this being developed as a primary commercial street. And you'll notice on the left we've articulated it quite a bit and broke down the scale so to bring more light in from the south side into the Market Street, make it a really friendly pedestrian area. We'll move down that street, primary commercial street, and we'll end up at the corner of what we were calling the Market Street. So you see on the right we've got slightly taller buildings, which is the north side of the street, lots of solar exposure. And to the left is the area that we saw as sort of the open parkway area. We think there's a great opportunity for that. So we'll zoom back out, kind of get a big picture of what the total district might look like, and from a different perspective. We've been looking at it from the same place the whole night. And essentially what you're getting to see is a different way to look at how we might develop these areas and different ways that we could develop in 3 dimensions. These don't represent the architectural expressions, it's just an idea to understand mass and scale of the district. What would happen if we took that concept and took it along farther? Now, we didn't use much imagination. We just put different heights and blocks in so you could see. We knew some information about the project that had previously gone through process of planning on the corner where the Yarrow is. But you can see that we developed a really interesting Market Street that has a central core green area in the center of the district, which you'd think providing that kind of space is really important when the redevelopment over a long term. But really we're focused on the corner here of the Powder Court properties, the Fisher DeJoria properties. And the next steps for us would be to move forward in looking at MPDs for the areas that are highlighted there in reddish orange, and starting to process that and using those as a point at which to compare the changes in the general plan and using the MPD process at the same time that allow us the flexibility to move densities and heights. And you also see here the reddish-orange area. That's the front portion of the yard. And we see that being as one of the primary pieces to come in and get started to develop and start the MPD process. Also, we think it's a great way to begin to test out the new general plan principles and use a project as its foil.